Good afternoon, ma'am and class. Today I'll be reading the Game of Thrones book, A Storm of Swords, written by George R.R. Martin. The novel describes an increasing war on the continent of Westeros known as the War of Five Kings, which had begun after the death of Ned Stark at the hand of Joffrey Baratheon, and the alliance between the Starks and the Lannisters had been broken. This happens as Daenerys Targaryen strengthens her armies in the east while taking over the cities of Astapor, Yunkai, and Meereen, whilst freeing slaves in the process. And all of this happens while the incoming threat of the White Walkers still lingers in the north. I chose this book because I enjoy fantasy novels and shows, as well as political family drama-centered shows. I chose this passage because it is about Daenerys freeing the slave army of the Unsullied in the city of Astapor and setting her path to sail to Westeros to take the Iron Throne. I really enjoyed watching this scene as it showed how Daenerys was proving the people around her wrong and showing that she is worthy of leading. Dany turned the whip in her hand, such a light thing to bear such weight. Is it done then? Do they belong to me? It is done, he agreed, giving the chain a sharp pull to bring Drogon down from the litter. Dany mounted her silver. She could feel her heart thumping in her chest. She felt desperately afraid. Was this what my brother would have done? She wondered if Prince Rhaegar had been this anxious when he saw the usurper's host formed up across the trident with all their banners floating on the wind. She stood in her stirrups and raised the harpy's fingers above her head for all the Unsullied to see. It is done, she cried at the top of her lungs. You are mine. She gave her mare her heels and galloped along the first rank, holding the fingers high. You are the dragons now. You are bought and paid for. It is done. It is done. She glimpsed. Old Grazdan turned his grey head sharply. He hears me speak Valyrian. The other slavers were not listening. They crowded around Krasnius and the dragon, shouting advice. Though the Astapori yanked and tugged, Drogon would not budge off the litter. Smoke rose grey from his open jaws, and his long curled, and his neck curled and straightened as he snapped at the slaver's face. Is it time to cross the trident, Dany thought, as she wheeled and rode her silver back. Her blood riders moved in close around her. You are in difficulty, she observed. He will not come, Krasnius said. There is a reason. A dragon is no slave. And Dany swept the lashes down as hard as she could across the slaver's face. Krasnius screamed and staggered back, the blood running red down his cheeks into his perfumed beard. The harpy's fingers had torn his features half to pieces with one slash, but she did not pause to contemplate the ruin. Drogon, she sang out loudly, sweetly, all her fear forgotten. Dragaris. The black dragon spread his wings and roared. A lance of swirling dark flame took Krasnius full in the face. His eyes melted and ran down his cheeks, and the oil in his hair and beard burst so fiercely into a fire. For an instant, the slaver wore a burning crown as tall as his head. The sudden stench of charred meat overwhelmed his perfume, and his wail seemed to drown all other sound. Then the plaza of punishment blew apart into blood and chaos. The good masters were shrieking, stumbling, and shoving one another aside, tripping over the fringes of their tokars in their haste. Drogon flew almost lazily at Krasnius, his black wings beating, as he gave the slaver another taste of fire. Iri and Jiki unchained Viserion and Rhaegar, and then suddenly there were 3 dragons in the air. When Dany turned to look, a third of Astaport's proud, demon-horned warriors were fighting to stay atop their terrified mounts, and another third were fleeing into a bright blaze of shiny copper. One man kept the saddle long enough to draw a sword, but Jorgul's whip coiled around his neck and cut off his shout. Another lost a hand to Rakaro's Akra and rode off reeling and spurting blood. Aggo calmly notching arrows to his bowstring and sending them at the tokars, silver, gold, or plain. He cared nothing for the fringe. Strong Balwas had his Akra out as well, and he spun it as he charged. Spears! Dany heard one Astapori shout. It was Grazdan. Old Grazdan in his tokar heavy with pearls. Unsullied, defend us, stop them, defend your masters. Spears, swords. When Ricardo put an arrow through his mouth, the slaves holding his sedan chair broke and ran, dumping him unceremoniously on the ground. The old man crawled to the first of the rank of eunuchs, his blood pooling onto the bricks. The Unsullied did not so much as look down to watch him die. Rank on rank on rank, they watched. They did not move. The gods have heard my prayer. Unsullied, Dani galloped before them, her silver gold braid flying behind her, her bells charming with every stride. Slay the good masters, slay the soldiers, slay every man who wears a toga or holds a whip, but harm no child under 12, and strike the chains of every child you see. She raised the harpy's fingers in the air, and then she flung the scourge aside. Freedom! She sang out, Dragaris, 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 they shouted back, the sweetest word she's ever heard. Dragaris, Dragaris, and all around them slavers ran and sobbed and begged and died, and the dusty air was filled with spears and fire. Thank you.